Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be continuing with our lessons of the American Civil War, kind of piggybacking on what we've done already with talking about the economic impact, political impact, and the impact on the home front with the war. As remember from our first lesson, we kind of touched on all of that from beginning to end. And just like yesterday, we talked about the impact it had on the home front when we wrote our letters back and forth to each other from the perspective of a soldier and family member. So kind of going off that, we're gonna take it back to one of the most important pieces of the war and a turning point of the war. And that was, of course, the Battle of Gettysburg. It was a 3-day battle. It took place July 1st through the 3rd, 1863, in the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Robert E. Lee was marching his army north, taking the fight into the northern territories. He was hoping to gain a lot of ground and kind of pressure President Lincoln into making a peace treaty, kind of bringing an end to the war in favor of the Confederate States. Of course, we know that wasn't the case, but as we talk about it, it is important to remember just how significant the war was and the impact it had on the people in it. The Battle of Gettysburg, not the war. The Battle of Gettysburg had 162,000 plus soldiers on both sides, on either side, both the Federal and the Confederate. And of those 165,000 soldiers, over 51,000 were considered casualties. And as we remember from our lesson from day one, we learned that a casualty is either a person who has been killed, injured, captured, or considered lost during battle. So just to give you an idea of how many people that is, I know 51,000 is just a number, but think of Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium holds just shy of 53,000 people. So just the casualties alone from one battle of the Civil War, Battle of Gettysburg, 51,000 people were casualties. So 51,000 can almost fill the entirety of Yankee Stadium. So that's just crazy. Those numbers are just insane. As part of that, after the battle and everything, President Lincoln decided, along with his cabinet and everything, his administration, decided to, as part of keeping the war effort going for the North, for the Union Army, to dedicate that battlefield to the fallen soldiers of the Union, because they were able to fight back Robert E. Lee's advances and kind of put a stop to their spread of the Confederacy up into the northern territories. So today we're also going to talk about the Gettysburg Address, kind of an important speech in history by President Lincoln to members of the Pennsylvania territory, states, and just an effort to keep the war going and the fight going towards the South. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the Gettysburg Address to you. There's a lot of language in here that people nowadays really don't understand, because it's not language that is used as often as it should. It's a bit poetic in terms of our vernacular today. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and read through the speech for you, You guys follow along, and as I'm going down, just highlight any kind of words or any kind of statements or sentences or whatever that you aren't familiar with, and maybe we'll touch on those. And then after I'm done reading it, I'll go through and I'll kind of read a translation, if you will, of the Gettysburg Address. So it's a little more our style of speaking today. So, Gettysburg Address happened November 19th, 1863, and like I said, it was a dedication for. They dedicated the field as a cemetery to the fallen Union soldiers of the Battle of Gettysburg. So, cold day, middle of November in Pennsylvania. So cold day, a lot of people there. President Lincoln was there, obviously, for the dedication. He wasn't scheduled to make a speech or anything, but he was asked to say a few words. And so he kind of jotted some stuff down, and this is what he came up with. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing that nation and any other nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives to that nation so that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, and we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated for us, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never be forgotten what they did here. It is for us, the living, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Pretty powerful words. I understand that might be kind of confusing with some of the vocabulary he used and everything, so we're going to go over that again. 407 years ago, our forefathers brought forth this continent, a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Basically here, President Lincoln is talking about our founding fathers of America bringing forth, beginning the country, starting the country, based on the idea that it was created equal for all men. And the 407 years ago is a measurement of time. So a score is 20 years. So 4 20 years times 4 be 80. And then 7 years ago, 7 years ago, 87 years ago. So he's talking about how the birth of our nation back in 1776. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can endure. Basically, he's saying, now we are at war with ourselves. It's a civil war. We're fighting each other. We're fighting our brethren. And this war is testing whether a country like ours can outlast what is happening. We are met on a great battlefield of that war, talking about the battlefield of Gettysburg. We're a battle of this war fought right here where we're standing. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that nation might live, so that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. We're here today to dedicate a part of this battlefield as a cemetery for those who gave their lives for the fight. And that's the right thing to do. It's what we should do in order to honor them. We have come to dedicate. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated far above our poor power to add or detract. So basically, he's saying that it was already an important piece of land because it's already been blessed. It's been baptized in blood from those who have fought there and gave their lives. And we can't even come close to blessing it any more than it already has been. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never be forgotten what they did here. And that is basically saying that after we're gone from this dedication, no one's going to care what we say. No one's going to care. But no one's ever going to forget what these soldiers sacrificed in order to fight for what they believe in and that all men are created equal. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work they fought. Excuse me. Let me redo that. It is for us, the living, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought had thus far so nobly advanced. Basically, Lincoln is saying that it is our job now. It is our job to pick up where they left off, to continue the fight, to continue the belief that all men are created equal. And that was one of the main purposes of the war, is that all men were to be equal. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that they were highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain. It is up to us to dedicate ourselves to this country and remind ourselves that people have died for this cause. We have to promise the soldiers that they did not die in vain. They didn't die for anything. Okay. So he's just reminding us that we still have a duty to make sure that we carry on. That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. We have the promise that this country under God be free again, because it is a government that is made by the people, for the people, and it's of the people. And we have to do everything we can to make sure that that democracy does not go. So that's just a little something, a very, very important address, a very important speech that was given back at Gettysburg during the dedication ceremony. And something that I want to touch on, Lincoln, pretty humble guy. He didn't think much of his words at the time, but little did he know that it would become one of the most important speeches of the time, because it gave new life into the Union cause and the effort. Just the one line he said, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never be forgotten what they did." So, even though he's saying that people are going to forget what is said here today, it is still important to keep the fight going. But, again, little did he know that this address would be a huge boost for the Union and the war effort. So, if we have any questions, we'll go ahead and get started with that. If not, then we will go ahead and continue our review of these past lessons. And then after we're done reviewing, we'll go ahead and watch the video of the Gettysburg Address. All right?